Story time about how my aunt drugged me. So a little background information, I was 16 and in 10th grade. And I had never met my aunt before, but whenever my parents talked about her, it was only bad things. Well, the one day I went to go and ask my mom something and I heard her on the phone with someone. She was like, no, I'm not giving you any more money. It's not my fault if you spent it all on drugs. And we barely talked about my aunt, so I didn't know that's who she was talking to. Fast forward, I come home from school the one day and my dad's sitting on the porch with this woman who looks like she's homeless. My dad introduces her. He's like, oh, by the way, this is your aunt. He was like, oh, well, she wants to spend some time with you, so you're going to go with her for a few hours. I was hesitant because of all of the stuff that my mom had told me about her, but I started walking down to her car and my mom whips in the driveway. Eventually, my aunt ends up talking my mom into letting me see her, and apparently my aunt has been asking to see me for a very long time. So she takes me to the mall, we eat, we get our nails done, and at this point, I'm thinking she's kind of normal until she takes me to her house. Like for part 2. Part 2 about my aunt who drugged me. So like I said, she ended up talking my mom into letting me go with her, which I was super grossed out because she smelled really bad and her car was a mess, but she took me to the mall. I thought she was normal. And then she took me to her house. When we got into the neighborhood, I kind of recognized it because my grandma lived in the same neighborhood. But anyways, we pull up and it is literally trashed. Like, there's fucking garbage all outside of the house. And I walked inside thinking that it would be better. No, it was filthy. There were needles everywhere. You could definitely tell that druggies lived there. And they had weird pictures hanging up all over the walls of these girls, random girls. Like when I asked who they were like, oh, I don't know. So then her boyfriend's walking around the house. He's like 40 years old, walking around in his boxers around me. So I call my mom, I go outside and I'm waiting for her. And my aunt comes out and she's like, do you want a glass of water? She gave me some water and it tasted really sour and I had chugged the whole thing. And that was the last thing I remember before I woke up on her couch in the morning. Like for part 3. Part 3 about my aunt who drugged me. So like I said, I was sitting outside on the stairs waiting for my mom and she comes over to me and asks me if I want a drink and I'm like, sure. So I chugged the water and it tasted sour, woke up in the morning on her couch. And when I woke up, my aunt was in the middle of doing drugs. And some random lady who I don't even know how she got there, she asked me if I wanted a cigarette or if I wanted any of the drugs. So I got up, I was like, no, I don't do drugs. And I ran out of the house and I was like super dizzy when I got up. So I ate shit on the way out of the house. I ran outside, I ran into this lady, I asked her to use her phone. I told her a little bit of what happened. After I ran towards my grandma's house and my mom came and picked me up and I got grounded for 3 months because my aunt drugged me and my mom let me go with my aunt.
Is it normal that my father still hits me even as an adult? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. When I was a kid and I got in trouble, my dad would hit me. I always knew to expect it, so it wasn't a really big deal. But of course, I would do my best to stay out of trouble. Sometimes he would use a belt and sometimes he would slap me across the face. The slapping was the worst part. From the ages of 10 to 12, I didn't really get hit because I never got in trouble. When I turned 14, things started getting rough. I wanted to date boys and my dad was not having it. So his form of punishment sometimes was even taking food away from me. This happened on 2 occasions when I was 14 and I almost ran away because of it. I know most of you are thinking that my mom should have stepped in, but my mom was pretty afraid of my dad too. Sometimes I feel like my parents have brainwashed me into thinking that what my dad is doing is fine. The sad part is that I'm now 20 and my dad still hits me from time to time. I do have to say my father has always been there for me. He's provided me with a great life and a good education. And it's not like he would just hit me out of nowhere. It was only when I got in trouble and for specific reasons. But I do think he needs to stop it because I'm 20 now. Here's where things get really messy. I just got engaged and my fiance hates my father. Follow for part 2. Is it normal that my father still hits me as an adult? Now that I'm 20 and engaged, I told my fiance about what my father did. Like I said, my father wouldn't just hit me out of nowhere. He would only do it when he was punishing me and for specific reasons. But my fiance loathes my father. He thinks it's abuse and that it wasn't a normal thing for me to have to endure as a child, especially as an adult. And I've only come to realize that what my dad is doing is probably wrong because of my fiance. Before that, I never had anybody in my life tell me that what my dad was doing was wrong. But here's what happened. My fiance and I were cooking in my parents' kitchen. My dad must have been in a really bad mood because he comes into the kitchen and says, if you don't clean up this mess, I'm gonna show your fiance how I slapped the shit out of you. My father had never shown that side of him in front of my fiance. But as soon as those words came out of my father's mouth, my fiance turned to him and said, you will never put your hands on her again. And my dad said, that's my daughter and I can do whatever I want. My fiance asked me to leave with him and I did. My mom called us and begged us to come back, but my fiance said no. Part 3 is it normal that my father still hits me as an adult? After my fiance stood up to my dad, we didn't speak to my family for about 2 months. That's when my fiance asked me to go to therapy. And I did. That's when I found out that what I really needed to do was fix my relationship with my father. Because he had always punished me physically, I held a lot of resentment towards him. And my father being very antiquated, he thought that he was doing the right thing. Now let me clear a few things up. He only hit me twice when I was an adult. Once when I was 19, I got a bad grade in one of my classes and he flipped out. He slapped me across the face and told me that that would teach me to do better. The second time was right after my 20th birthday. I had gotten into an argument with my mom that really wasn't such a big deal. My mom and I worked things out, but my dad thought it was inappropriate that I spoke to my mom like that. Was I very disrespectful? No. But to him, it was completely unacceptable. So he hit me once with his belt. My fiance is refusing to invite my parents to our wedding, and to be honest, I kind of agree with him. Ever since stepping away from my parents, I have so much more confidence. I'm also happier in my relationship because I'm getting to be myself, and I'm not afraid that anyone will punish me. But I do feel guilty. I want to reach out to my parents. I'm not sure. What should I do?
Storytime about how I was voted the ugliest girl in high school. Disclaimer, is not my storytime, it's me on Instagram. Growing up, I was really awkward. My parents always used to call me the ugly duckling, but my dad told me not to worry, that when I would grow up, I would become beautiful. Honestly, this really stuck to my head, and I am very beautiful now. I used to have braces, acne. My hair has always been curly, but I didn't know how to treat it back then. My mom had really straight hair, so she had no idea how to do my hair either. And this was the toughest thing for me. I would show up to school with knots in my hair because I didn't even know how to brush it. Eventually, my mom did start taking better care of my hair, which really helped. I also didn't know how to dress for my body. I wore big hoodies, big t-shirts, while the other girls in my high school dressed for their body type. I honestly just had no clue. I did get bullied, but mostly by boys. I think the girls probably just felt bad for me, so I never really had problems with other girls. A group of boys would always bother me. One of them even asked me out, pretending that he wanted to go out with me. Of course I said yes because I actually believed him. He asked me to go to the movies, and when I showed up, he wasn't there. I decided to go watch the movie anyway, but the next day in school, I couldn't hear the end of it. To my face, this guy called me stupid. A few days later, they made a list of the ugliest girls. Part 2 is up. Storytime about how I was voted the ugliest girl in high school. Disclaimer, is not my storytime, it's me on Instagram. That's when the boys came out with the list of the ugliest girls in high school. What they did was pass around some flyers with all the names on it, and then they had people write the number 1 ugliest girl on the list. As soon as I saw my name on the list, I wanted to die. I pretended I was sick and went home. There was this one girl who actually stood up for me and the rest of the girls, and she was actually one of the prettiest girls in the entire school. She told everyone to knock it off, but nobody listened to her. Instead, the boys added her to the list as well, but there was no way that she was going to get voted number 1. I would show up every day to school that week wishing that I was dead. Finally, on Friday, they came out with the winner. And of course, everyone picked me. I was completely mortified, but I actually started laughing when I saw the list. It was like the stress from the entire week had finally accumulated, and my reaction was to just laugh. While they were all hoping that I was just going to break down and cry, I started to laugh in their faces. The teacher asked me what was wrong and I showed her the list. She ran over to the principal's office and everything became way too dramatic for me. So I literally decided to run away from school. When I got home, I told my parents everything. Part 3 is up. Storytime about how I was voted the ugliest girl in high school. Disclaimer, is not my storytime, it's me on Instagram. When I got home and told my parents what happened, my dad actually started to cry. He actually did feel really bad for me. They sat me down and told me that looks weren't everything. That's when my dad told me again that I would grow out of this awkward phase. Then they decided to take me shopping to the mall. I went into this really cute clothing store that I had always wanted to go to but never had the courage to, and they actually bought me a full wardrobe. After that, that's when my mom took me to a salon and they actually did my hair. They gave me a whole hair care routine, which I had never even heard of before, and I even went and got some Noxzema, which actually the Noxzema really worked for my acne. So when I got back to school, I felt like a different person, but not really because I was still me. The principal had gone out of her way to make all the boys pay, but really they only got suspension and didn't go to school for a week. The rest of high school was actually not that bad. I did look a lot better. 5 years later, I'm absolutely gorgeous. And guess what? One of the boys who bullied me actually slipped into my DMs last week. What should I say?
Storytime about how my best friend and I beat up my husband after he hit me. Disclaimer, is not my storytime, it's me on Instagram. My husband and I have always had a really toxic relationship. He's always been extremely jealous and controlling. We've been together for 2 years, and within those 2 years, he's managed to separate me from all of my friends and my family. I still keep in contact with my family secretly whenever he's not around. I usually call my mom as soon as he leaves the house and I talk to her for about an hour. But my husband somehow always finds out when I'm talking to my mom. Sometimes I even think that he put cameras in our house so that he could watch me when he's not home. I usually work from home, so I'm always in my house, and he loves it that way. Even if I want to go to the supermarket, I have to call him and ask him for permission. But my best friend has always stuck by me. She comes over unannounced just to check up on me, and my husband hates her. He even told her one time that she needed to stay away from our house. But of course, she didn't listen to him. My husband has gotten physical with me in the past, but never as bad as this last time. Got into an altercation because I wanted to go out with my best friend. We just wanted to have a simple dinner, but he didn't want me to go. But I decided to dress up and I left the house. As I was leaving the house, he grabbed me and slapped me. Best friend was outside, came in, and she started punching him. So I started punching him too. I went to my parents' house and I've been staying there since. But my husband keeps wanting me to come back. What should I do? Storytime about how I've never farted in front of my boyfriend and can't even poop if he's in my house, which led me to pooping in my car by mistake. Disclaimer is not my Storytime, was sent to me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have been together for 3 months. We are so in love and we met through a dating app. He even moved into my apartment. I know some might say it's quick, but it's just meant to be. We are so in love. We get along super well. We're so attracted to each other. Our sexy time is like amazing, like the best I have ever had. And I was the one that asked him to move in with me and he said yes right away. I actually thought he was going to say no, but he was so down for it that I was so happy. Before he moved in, he actually would come over to my house all the time, and he started farting in front of me. It was cute, funny, whatever. But I can't bring myself to doing it in front of him. I can't even poo when he's in my apartment, much less could I poo when I was at his. So I found myself having to hold it in all day long. Anytime we would go to a restaurant, I would try to go, but sometimes I just couldn't go because I knew that he was there. It's all become very complicated. Now that he moved into my place, we love watching movies. So we were sitting on the couch watching a movie, and suddenly I felt the urge to go to the bathroom. There was no way I was gonna go poop while he was there. Out of nowhere, I jump up and tell him that I have to go out. I get in my car, part 2 is up. Storytime about how I can't fart in front of my boyfriend or even poop when he's in the same place as me, which caused me to poo in my car by mistake. Disclaimer, this is not my Storytime, it's sent to me on Instagram. Out of nowhere, I jump off the couch and tell him I have to go to the supermarket. He offers to go for me and I said no, but in hindsight, I should have said yeah, sure, you go, so that I could stay alone in the apartment by myself and go poo. I grab my keys and jump in the car, and then suddenly, I start pooping. I couldn't control myself. I couldn't believe it was happening right then and there. I stopped the car and pulled over and just pooped in my car. Luckily, I was wearing baggy pants, so you couldn't really notice it. Suddenly, I remembered I had an extra change of clothes in my car. I looked behind me and there it was, a pair of jeans. I take off my sweatpants and try to wipe myself as best as I could. And I actually went to a CVS, went into the bathroom, cleaned myself. I even bought baby wipes. Oh my god. I changed into the jeans and I got back in the car and went home. When I get home, my boyfriend says, "Did you just change?" Then I told him I ripped my pants somehow in the grocery store. And then he said, "You didn't bring anything back from the grocery store." And I didn't know what to say. Part 3 is up. Storytime about how I can't fart in front of my boyfriend and this caused me to poop in my car by mistake. Disclaimer is not my Storytime, it was sent to me on Instagram. I told him that I had ripped my pants, so I changed into other pants. And then he asked, "But you didn't bring anything back from the supermarket." And I said, "Oh yeah, you're right." Then I told him that I went to CVS instead because I needed baby wipes, which I actually did buy them, so I showed them to him. But let's remember I had just pooped on myself, so I really wanted to take a shower. So I tell him, "Hey babe, I'm actually gonna take a shower because I just got my period." Then he says, "But you just had your period last week." I just kept digging a bigger and bigger grave. And he sits me down and says, "What's going on?" I just couldn't lie anymore. And I told him the truth, that I had pooped in the car because I didn't want to poop in the apartment because he was there. That's when he started laughing maniacally and told me that I was being so stupid. To this day, I still can't fart in front of my boyfriend. And I still can't go to the bathroom. I'm not sure how to fix this or how to even go about actually doing it for the first time. So maybe you guys have some ideas. Also never going back to that CVS because I'm pretty sure I didn't put the pants in the trash and they were just lying on the floor and they saw me go in. What should I do? Storytime about how a strange man abused me because I didn't want to give him my phone number. Disclaimer, this is not my Storytime, it's sent to me on Instagram. I'm a 34-year-old mother of 2. I'm also a single mom, but I do own my own bakery. Most days I work from home, but I do go to the bakery every single day to open and close. I usually have about 4 employees at the bakery at once because we get really busy. On this occasion, one of my workers called out sick, so I decided to step in for her. I dropped my kids off at school and then I went straight to the bakery. Let me just fill you guys in on what I was wearing. I had on a matching set of activewear. So blue leggings and a blue top, which covered my stomach. In other words, I wasn't showing a lot of skin. When I get to the bakery, I see a man sitting in the corner. He had purchased his food and he was eating. I had a quick chat with all my employees asking them how the day was going, and they told me that the man had kept staring at them the entire time. And I look at the guy and sure enough, he is staring at all of us. I asked them to just ignore him. But this was a huge mistake. After a few minutes, the man came back up to the counter. He asked me for a sandwich and I gave it to him. He paid and went back to sit down, but then kept staring at me the entire time. And at my other female employees. Part 2 is up. Storytime about how a strange man abused me because I didn't want to give him my phone number. Disclaimer, is not my Storytime, instead of me on Instagram. The guy just kept staring at me and my employees. After a bit, I asked him if he was okay and if he wanted something else. Obviously, he said no and just kept sitting at the table. But again, he kept staring at my employees and at me. This obviously made us uncomfortable, so I decided to do something about it. I decided that the best thing would be to just close the store. I go to the man and tell him that we were going to close and if he needed anything else to buy it now. Then he says, "Actually, I would like to talk to you." And I said, "Sure, what's up?" Honestly, I thought he was going to ask for a job. But no, he starts complimenting my hair, my body, and told me that I was too beautiful to be working there. That's when I told him that I was actually the owner of the bakery. And he says, "Wow, that's even more impressive." Let me describe this man. He was actually okay looking, mid-20s, and dressed pretty well. He just looked like a normal guy. Then he asked me to sit down at the table. I said no. That's when he told me that he'd been coming to my bakery for a week and that he'd been watching me. Then he grabbed my hand and pulled me down to sit next to him. Then he proceeds to put his hand on my lap. Creepy. Part 3 is up.
Story time about how a strange man abused me because I did not want to give him my phone number. Disclaimers not my story time. I sent him on Instagram. That's when he slid his hand onto my lap. I quickly get up from the table and ask him to leave. That's when he said, "Why are you freaking out? I'm just trying to get your number." Then I told him that there was absolutely zero chance I would ever give him my phone number. And he said, "Oh, you think you have a choice?" And he holds out his phone so that I could type in my number. I pushed his phone back and again asked him to leave. He threatened me and said that he wouldn't leave until I gave him my number. My knees and hands were shaking. Look back at my employees behind the counter and they are scared. That's when one of my employees says, "I'm gonna call the cops." And I said, "Yes, call them." As soon as I turned back to this man, he swings at me. He wasn't able to reach my face, but then he grabbed me by the shoulders and pushed me down onto the ground. This all happened in about 30 seconds. As I'm on the ground, he starts slapping me. I covered my face with my arms and I just started kicking at him. And my two female employees, who by the way are like 17 and 18, start attacking the guy. And then he starts hitting them. Thankfully, two men from the street hear me yelling. They came in and tackled him and the police arrived 2 minutes later. I found out this guy was stalking me for a month. I got a restraining order. Be careful out. Tell me about a time where a guy made you feel uncomfortable because you did not want to give him your number and you rejected his advances. I'll go first. Yes, I'm laying on my bear. In 2016, I was living in LA. I'm living in LA now again. I went out with a few friends and there was this guy that saw me. He came up to me right away. At first, he wasn't being super aggressive. It was kind of just like, "Hi, how are you?" sort of thing, small talk. Of course, me being the person that I am, I was being nice to him, but I wasn't being overly nice. I was just being like, "Oh, my name's Esther. Nice to meet you." You know? On the other hand, he was like wanting to know my life story. And I was like, "Dude, no. No, I'm sorry, but no. Like, you're a good looking guy and everything, but I'm that's just not what I'm trying to do." And that's okay. You know, that's okay too. It's okay to not want that. Of course, he asks me for my Instagram, and that's when I say, so I just said, you know, I don't really feel like giving you my Instagram. He was shook. He was like, "Is this girl serious?" And I was like, yeah. And then he was like, "Why don't you want to give me your Instagram?" And I just said, "Look, I'm sorry. It's just, you know, it's not, you know, it's more like my work kind of place. You know, I post a lot of stuff for work." And he's like, "Yeah, I get you. He's like, "So give me your number." And then I said, "No." And I said it politely. It's not like I'm not sitting there like, "No." I was like, "Oh, sorry. I don't give my phone number out like that." Then he tells me that I shouldn't go out dressed the way that I was if I didn't want male attention. Let me see if I can find a picture of what I was wearing. This is the outfit I was wearing. It's cute. Is it sexy? Cute? Yeah. But it's not, you know, I can wear whatever I want. After he says this, I stayed quiet because I wanted to see what he would say. Then he was like, "Oh, I bet you're a model." And I was like, "Yeah." Oh my God. Then he said something like, "You think you're too good for me?" I didn't say anything. And as he's saying all this, I'm surrounded by two friends and we're just like, Jesus Christ, man, like, calm down. Anyway, he walks away. The following day I get a DM. This guy did find my Instagram. Of course he did. And the DM says, "Gotcha." Like, what, you found my Instagram? What are you gonna do? I'm sick of guys. I'm so glad I'm married.
But anyway, tell me your experience. What happened to you?